Tony Grossi didn't pull punches. Neither did Mary Kay Cabot or Jason Lloyd. Their coverage of SHEDEUR Sanders has gone far beyond criticism, into what some now call character assassination. Stories mocking his injuries, spotlighting trivial legal citations, and framing him as unfit for the NFL have fueled a growing media storm. But what makes this different is the coordinated feel of it.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
These aren't isolated jabs. They're part of a steady drumbeat that, according to some, reflects a deeper bias. And now, the backlash isn't just coming from fans. It's coming from the top. Roger Goodell has made it clear. The NFL won't be a bystander, while media figures shape distorted narratives around young black quarterbacks. His public rebuke of this coverage, and of the journalists behind it, marks an unprecedented moment in league history. By holding the press to account, Goodell is asserting that fair play doesn't end on the field. The league's future won't be dictated by headlines that tear down talent for clicks. Instead, it will be guided by leadership that's willing to call out injustice, even when it means confronting powerful voices in the media. This is not the NFL we're used to. For decades, the league has been criticized for staying silent during moments that demanded a spine. Racial bias in hiring? Vague statements. Questionable media coverage targeting black athletes? Deflection. Player development disparities? Buried in coach speak and system fit excuses. But now, in a move no one expected, Roger Goodell, the same commissioner who spent most of his tenure playing it safe, is publicly going to war with the very people who help shape the league's narratives, coaches, refs, and the media. And the spark that lit the fire? SHEDEUR Sanders. A rookie quarterback, young, talented, and carrying the weight of his last name, walked into the league with expectations, excitement, and yes, a target on his back. But what happened next was less about football and more about power, and bias, and sabotage disguised as strategy. According to the reports, Goodell believes SHEDEUR didn't just get a tough rookie landing. He got systematically undermined. At the center of it all, Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski, a coach who, despite Sanders' draft status and potential, allegedly denied him the chance to take meaningful reps with the first team. Instead, Sanders was placed on the scout team, a unit designed not to develop talent, but to simulate the opposing team's plays. That's not just a snub. It's a ceiling. One that keeps rookies locked out of real progression. And what followed wasn't a fluke. It was a pattern. In that environment, defenders reportedly targeted Sanders with physical hits during practice. Hits that went unpenalized. Hits that should have raised questions about player safety and protection. But no flags were thrown. No coaches stepped in. No accountability. And while that was happening on the field, the media machine off the field was kicking into high gear. Not content with dissecting Sanders' mechanics or analyzing his decisions like they do for other rookie QBs, some journalists, Tony Grossi, Mary Kay Cabot, Jason Lloyd, took it further. They mocked injuries. They exaggerated off-field issues. They spun minor infractions, like traffic tickets, into discipline concerns. And worst of all, they suggested, publicly, that Sanders didn't deserve a roster spot at all. Let that sink in. A highly touted rookie quarterback is getting mocked for being hurt, scrutinized for things unrelated to football, and erased from serious consideration, not because of performance, but because of perception. That's the issue Roger Goodell is calling out. Loudly. This isn't about playing favorites. It's not even about defending one player. It's about defending the integrity of the league's developmental process. And more importantly, exposing the quiet double standards that still plague how black quarterbacks are evaluated, supported, and represented. Historically, the path for black QBs has always been steep. For years, they were told, implicitly and explicitly, that they didn't have the right makeup to lead, that they lacked intangibles, that they weren't pocket passers. Even as more and more black quarterbacks shattered those tired stereotypes, the scrutiny stayed. And now here we are in 2026, still having to talk about it. Because despite his tools, his poise, and his clear upside, SHEDEUR Sanders has been treated like an outsider. The media noise hasn't just been negative, it's been hostile. And the coaching decisions haven't been developmental. They've been damaging. That's what makes Goodell's response so serious. When a commissioner gets involved in a team's personnel structure, that's rare. When he starts naming media outlets and individual journalists, that's almost unheard of. But Goodell is done pretending that neutrality equals justice. He sees the pattern, and he's trying to stop it before it writes SHEDEUR's entire NFL story in advance. There's also the bigger picture. Goodell isn't just pointing fingers. He's acknowledging his own role in allowing this type of thing to persist. He's admitting that the league hasn't always gotten it right when it comes to race, opportunity, and fairness. That in the past, the NFL might have ignored these dynamics or brushed them aside as internal matters. Not this time. Goodell's even going as far as considering removing Stefanski from his role. That's not just unprecedented. That's a declaration. A line in the sand. If a coach is creating a toxic or discriminatory developmental environment, the league will intervene. Period. This could send shockwaves through every front office. Because if a coach can be held accountable for racial bias in how he manages player development, that changes everything. It forces every coach to rethink how they treat their quarterbacks, not just what they say in press conferences, but what they do behind closed doors. It also forces the media to take a long look in the mirror. Because the difference between critical coverage and character assassination matters. And in this case, the coverage crossed the line. When journalists are laughing at injuries or elevating irrelevant nonsense like parking tickets into narratives about maturity, they're not covering football anymore. They're building a story that makes failure feel inevitable. And the thing is, it's not working. Despite everything thrown at him, Sanders still has massive support from fans. That says a lot. Because while the media has been relentless, fans haven't turned. They see what's happening. They see a young player trying to grow in a league that seems intent on clipping his wings before he can even take off. That disconnect between media narrative and fan sentiment is growing. Fans are no longer just passive consumers of whatever stories reporters feed them. They're online. They're watching film. They know when someone's getting dragged unfairly, and they're not buying it anymore. So when Goodell stands up and says this isn't just about one player, people listen. It's about how the league evaluates talent, how it fosters growth, how it corrects internal bias. It's about shifting from performative inclusion to real accountability. This moment with SHEDEUR Sanders could become a turning point, a precedent. If the commissioner really follows through, if Stefanski is removed, if media access is reviewed, if teams are warned about developmental equity, then maybe this is the start of the NFL finally walking the talk. Because right now, this isn't just about football. It's about fairness. It's about the future. It's about whether the NFL wants to be a league where talent rises, or a league where perception buries players before they even get a fair snap. Fans have already made their choice. And now, the league is being forced to catch up. So what do you think? Should Goodell have stepped in? Is SHEDEUR Sanders being unfairly targeted? Or is this just the rookie pressure cooker? Does media bias really shape careers the way it seems to here? Let's talk about it in the comments. If you want to see more breakdowns like this, where we pull apart the drama and call it what it actually is, make sure you're subscribed. Hit that like button, share it with someone following the story, and stay locked in. Because this isn't just one headline. This is the kind of moment that could change how the NFL works, for good. And look, if you think this is just another rookie quarterback storyline that'll blow over by midseason, you haven't been paying attention. This isn't a cold streak. It's not about struggling with a new playbook or adjusting to the speed of the game. This is about what happens when the system itself is wired to keep you out of the spotlight, no matter how bright your potential is. When SHEDEUR Sanders entered the NFL, people expected noise. What they didn't expect was a silent war being waged behind closed doors. One where practice reps are treated like bargaining chips. One where biased narratives do more damage than an interception ever could. One where even getting the chance to compete is treated like a privilege instead of a right. And in the middle of it all, the most unlikely figure decides to blow it wide open. Roger Goodell. Let's not pretend this is normal. Commissioners usually stay far, far away from media feuds and locker room politics. They handle suspensions, fines, rule changes, broad strokes. But not this time. This time, Goodell didn't just step in. He slammed the table. He called it what it was, a coordinated campaign of hatred. And he didn't sugarcoat who was involved. Start with Kevin Stefanski, a coach with job security, playoff appearances, and now, potentially, a scandal on his hands. The accusation? That he intentionally denied Sanders meaningful development. No first-team reps, no chance to build chemistry. Just scout team scraps, while less promising prospects got the real snaps. That's not a coaching decision. That's sabotage with a smile. Because when you strip a quarterback of first-team experience, you're not just benching him. You're ensuring he won't grow. You're guaranteeing rust. You're planting the seed for fans and media to say, he's not ready. And that's exactly what happened. While Sanders was buried in meaningless practice reps, the media turned his story into clickbait. Jason Lloyd, Mary Kay Cabot, Tony Grossi, all three had something in common. They didn't just critique his play, they came for his character. They mocked his minor injuries. They blew traffic citations into full-blown controversies. And they pushed the narrative that he was a distraction, a diva, a mistake. It wasn't analysis. It was character assassination in slow motion. And the timing? Convenient. Because when a player's not getting real game action, there's no film to defend him. No highlight reel. No stats. Just speculation. Just spin. This wasn't just about coverage. It was about control. Control the reps. Control the story. Control the perception. That's why Goodell stepped in. Because when all those pieces line up, a sideline QB, a silent coaching staff, and a media chorus trashing the same guy for weeks, it stops being coincidence. It starts looking like a hit job. And let's be honest, this isn't new. The NFL has always had a quarterback type. And for years, black quarterbacks had to break through walls just to be taken seriously. They were too raw, too flashy, not pocket passers, lacked leadership, didn't fit the system. These aren't critiques. These are coded messages. Worn-out excuses used to justify benchings, trades, cuts, moves that white quarterbacks with worse stats would never have to worry about. That's the system SHEDEUR Sanders walked into. And within weeks, he got the full playbook of how it operates when it doesn't want you. But this time, the league didn't stay silent. Goodell went on record, not just about Sanders, but about all of it. He admitted the league has failed in the past. That black quarterbacks have been held to different standards. That racial bias, whether in coaching rooms or press boxes, still influences careers. And that now, finally, the NFL is done pretending it's not happening. You can't overstate how big this is. Because this isn't performative. This isn't another social justice PSA with dramatic music and a halftime panel. This is the commissioner of the NFL threatening to remove a sitting head coach for creating an environment of developmental bias. That's not optics. That's power. Goodell is setting a precedent that could reshape how coaches operate. If you're a head coach now, you don't just have to win games. You have to prove you're giving every player, regardless of race, name, or media attention, a fair chance to succeed. That changes scouting. That changes roster battles. That changes everything. It also sends a direct message to the media. You're not untouchable anymore. Because when Goodell called out specific names, it wasn't just about embarrassment. It was about drawing a line. There's a difference between critical journalism and a smear campaign. When reporters start laughing at a player's injury or suggesting his parking tickets reflect poor character, they're no longer reporting. They're shaping an outcome. And in Sanders' case, the outcome they wanted was clear, off the field, out of sight, out of the conversation. But fans weren't having it. Through all the noise, all the drama, all the slanted coverage, fans stayed on Sanders' side. That's what really cut through the chaos. The fact that public support for him didn't vanish. In fact, it grew. Because fans saw what was happening. They watched the media jump on every mistake, no matter how small. They saw how a talented rookie was being boxed out of fair reps. And they knew, deep down, this wasn't about football. This was about a league deciding who gets to be a star and who doesn't. That disconnect between fans and media has never been clearer. And the league finally seems to be acknowledging it. Because when a quarterback with name recognition, college success, and fan backing gets shoved to the margins without a fair shot, that's a red flag. Not just for the player, but for what kind of league this is becoming. Goodell knows that if he doesn't act now, the NFL's entire commitment to equity, branding crumbles. And so here we are. A potential coaching removal. A public media takedown. A recommitment to fairness not just in theory, but in practice. This is no longer about one player. It's about whether the NFL is going to continue letting unspoken bias decide who gets developed and who gets discarded. And yeah, it's uncomfortable. It's messy. But it's necessary. Because the stakes aren't just about SHEDEUR Sanders' career. They're about every player watching from the sidelines, wondering if they'll get a real chance, or just get written out of the script before the cameras even start rolling. So where does the league go from here? If Goodell follows through, if Stefanski is held accountable, if those media lines are redrawn, then this could be a shift not just in policy, but in culture. But if the noise fades, if nothing changes, if it's all forgotten after the next big game, then nothing's different. And the cycle will continue. That's why this moment matters. And that's why it's not just about being on Sanders' side. It's about being on the side of fairness, of real development, of not letting talent go to waste because it didn't fit someone's preferred narrative. And here's the truth no one in the league office wants to say out loud. If SHEDEUR Sanders was anyone else, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. If he didn't have the last name Sanders, if he wasn't the son of Dion, if he wasn't black, would he still have been sent to the scout team? Would he still be taking hits in practice without flag protection? Would traffic tickets be front-page drama? Let's not pretend this league hasn't seen mediocre rookie quarterbacks get endless opportunities just because they fit the mold. Guys with half the talent, twice the excuses, and none of the scrutiny. But with Sanders, the bar was already set impossibly high the second he walked into the building. And when he didn't clear it on day one, the teardown began. No patience. No developmental runway. Just, he's not it. And the media couldn't get enough. Local journalists, people with decades of locker room access and relationships, started treating Sanders like a threat, not a prospect. Every minor hiccup was repackaged as evidence that he didn't belong. Every report had that same smug undertone. This kid isn't ready. And we told you so. But here's the thing. When that message comes from the media, it influences more than just public opinion. It starts shaping internal decisions. Coaches hear it. Executives hear it. Players hear it. And when it's repeated enough times, it becomes truth, regardless of what's actually happening on the field. That's what Goodell's finally calling out. Because this isn't just about coverage, it's about consequences. When a player's development is derailed not by lack of talent, but by orchestrated bias, whether in practice reps or media framing, it's a form of institutional failure. And for Goodell, it's personal now. He's acknowledging that the league has dropped the ball on this before. That systemic problems, especially when it comes to how black quarterbacks are treated, have gone unchecked for too long. That's why his move here isn't performative. He's not just releasing a statement or starting a task force. He's threatening to remove a head coach over it. That's about as real as it gets. Because when the message reaches that level, that a coach could lose their job not for losing games, but for creating a racially biased developmental environment, it means the rules have changed. And a whole lot of people are suddenly uncomfortable. Behind the scenes, you can bet other coaches are nervous. Front offices are watching this unfold and asking themselves, are we next? Are our development practices about to be audited? Because if Stefanski is removed, it sets a precedent. It says you don't get to hide behind phrases like competition or team fit, while quietly burying players who don't match your comfort zone. It says the league is finally watching what you do, not just what you say. And on the media side, the message is just as loud. Goodell calling out specific names, Grossi, Cabot, Lloyd, tells journalists everywhere, you're not beyond criticism. You don't get to hide behind opinion When your words are actively damaging a player's reputation for reasons that have nothing to do with football. There's a line between holding athletes accountable and constructing hit pieces. And in SHEDEUR's case, that line was crossed repeatedly. He wasn't getting coverage. He was getting character assassinated. And yet, the fans didn't turn. That's maybe the most important piece of all this. Through every ugly headline and every shady coaching move, the public never fully bought it. They saw what was happening. They watched the media beat the same drum every week, and they said, nah, something's off here. Support for Sanders never disappeared. It grew louder, more defiant, because people know when someone's getting played. They've seen this story before, just with different names. Talented black quarterbacks who come into the league with sky-high potential only to get slow-walked, sidelined, or discarded because the infrastructure never really wanted them there in the first place. But Sanders? He's still standing, still fighting, still carrying himself with poise, despite being handed the worst possible version of a welcome to the league experience. And now, for once, the league itself is backing him. Goodell's not just protecting SHEDEUR. He's protecting the idea that every player deserves a fair shot. That development shouldn't be decided by who you are or how comfortable you make a coach feel. This moment has turned into something symbolic. A rookie quarterback facing down a system that never truly wanted to develop him. A commissioner finally deciding that silence equals complicity. A fan base refusing to let biased narratives write the ending to a story that's barely begun. But we all know how this works. If nothing changes after this, the next SHEDEUR Sanders will face the same thing. He'll get drafted, sidelined, and smeared. The cycle will repeat. That's why the league can't let this be a one-off controversy. This has to become a turning point. Accountability has to become policy. Bias has to be confronted where it lives, in the locker rooms, in the press boxes, in the small decisions that add up to career destruction. And coaches need to know, development isn't just a luxury they get to pick and choose. It's a responsibility. If you draft a player, you owe them a real shot. Not lip service. Not scout team exile. A real shot. Because if you're not building them up, you're breaking them down. And if the latter happens along racial lines, that's not coaching. It's discrimination, plain and simple. That's what Goodell's finally making clear. And love him or hate him, you've got to admit, this time he's doing what commissioners are supposed to do. Protect the integrity of the league. Not just the logos, not just the business, but the people, especially the ones the system would rather ignore. So, where do we go from here? Does Stefanski get fired? Do media outlets apologize? Do teams finally rethink how they develop quarterbacks who don't look the part? We don't know yet. But here's what we do know. This story isn't just going away. Because now that the league has finally admitted the problem exists, it's on them to fix it. And fans will be watching every move. So drop your thoughts below. Do you believe the commissioner did the right thing? Should there be consequences for biased coaching and slanted media coverage? And what should happen next for Sanders, for Stefanski, and for the league as a whole? Make sure you're subscribed. We're not done following this. And trust, with the NFL under a spotlight this hot, the next chapter is coming fast. Hit that like button if you're tired of the double standards. Share this with someone who still thinks this is just football. And let us know in the comments. Is this the beginning of change, or just another storm the league's hoping to outlast? Because one thing's for sure, if SHEDEUR Sanders is the flashpoint, then the fire is just getting started.